Mi gente, welcome to Garza, Gaitan, and the Game. This is your podcast where we go play by play analyzing the game of politics. Myself, Wadi Gaitan, and Daniel Garza here. Daniel, how's it going?
Things are good, man. A lot of things popping, Waddy. The game is hot.
The game is hot for sure. And this
A lot of
week,
action.
this week, front and center was the fact that Donald Trump cumplió his 100 days in office. There was analysis coming in from the right, from the left, conservatives, Republicans, Democrats, and liberals all around. There were really also, we saw the left coming in, bringing in Kamala Harris. She did a speech in San Francisco on the same day, if I'm not mistaken, on Wednesday, on that 101-day mark of his presidency. But let's get into it. Daniel, oh, actually, even before we get into it, we just want to remind folks to subscribe here on YouTube, Spotify, follow us. We're on X, Instagram, and TikTok. But yes, diving right into it. Daniel, I want to hear from you. These 100 days, Donald Trump went to the state of Michigan, a state that he won in 2016, but then Joe Biden won in 2020. But then he did a big comeback when it comes to the 2024 election. I think that was a little bit of the theme from Donald Trump, this comeback of America, investing in America. How do you analyze this rally, the energy? Is this a president that you think is, after meeting these 100 days, is kind of gonna let go of the gas pedal coming into this week? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, Waddy, I think the dust will start to settle a little bit. I mean, I don't think they're gonna have the same frenetic pace, but there's no question that this team that the president has assembled are under, let's just say, a standard at this point that the president has set that I think will sustain at least a high level of energy and activity moving forward. Maybe not at the same level as the 100 days, but I suspect also that, for example, a lot of the cases that has hit a wall because of judicial activism, or at least judicial interventionism, will begin to move as it moves up, the courts and start to decide in favor of the executive. I honestly feel that a lot of these decisions by the judges are the judges themselves imposing their own political preferences on the executive, which you cannot do. That's judicial activism. That's the role of the executive. The executive is the one that actually executes policy on many things that, of course, Congress has laid down as markers. And it is the role of the judiciary to consider whether it's constitutional or not impose their will, not impose another agenda, not impose alternative agendas. That is not your role as a judge. It's either constitutional or it's not, right? And I think there's going to be a lot of victories as we move forward, and it will unlock a lot of what the Trump is trying to do. And whether you agree with him or not, that is not the issue here. It is his decision rights that I think are being held up by the courts
Daniel,
as the president of the United States. So
yeah,
I think you're going to see some activity there.
yeah, and I will add, I think, there's a lot of cases going, and there's a chance that some of these might not come back in favor of the presidency.
Sure.
But what I think what could happen there is it will, if anything, motivate more than they are already for the White House to continue working through Congress. Because there is, I think, something to be said that while there is a lot of actions with the 104 executive actions taken, there's a lot there that is positive. I think there's also an appetite from those who are looking beyond the next 4 years to say, hey, how do we then take these items to Congress? And how do we make sure that these are long-term impacts, right? Reflected in the budget that Congress is doing, reflected in the laws that they're passing. So I do think in the case that some of these come back into the Supreme Court, it's very nuanced sometimes when the Supreme Court rules, right? I'm trying to remember when it was on DACA where some of it sort of was unconstitutional, but some of it was permitted, right? Or even sometimes it's the way in which it's done, not necessarily that the end goal is
but
wrong.
you know what's annoying here, though, Wadi, is that the strongest branch really should be the legislative. They are the true representatives of the American people. They are the folks that are elected at the very local level to go to the halls of Congress,
Yeah.
enact law, and then that law has to be executed by a president and interpreted, if it's constitutional or not, by a judiciary. But the tables have turned here. What we're seeing in this case is that the judiciary, because of whatever is motivating them, have now inserted themselves like a bad referee in a soccer game, starts to make all these decisions and all of a sudden imposes himself on the game, right? And what plays out. And that shouldn't be the case. And it's also the president who has increased his power, or at least, has dusted off a lot of, the maybe what have been responsibilities that are under his purview, but had been ignored in the past. He's revived them, and now he's like a strong president. I agree with you. I would love to see the legislative rise up and take control here, but they're fighting themselves. There's internal battles that we're seeing, and it's broken right now.
Yeah, there has to be that. That's a really good point, because I think sometimes, even in my analysis, I've sort of said where the White House needs to work with Congress, but there's a responsibility of Congress. They don't need hand holding. I mean, these are leaders, elected folks that can take initiative on their end. Look, one thing I will say, again, if I'm a Republican voter who really cares about the next 4 years, I think a lot of the reasons why President Trump had to take so many executive orders is not just because of the last 4 years of Democrats, but because of the last 20 years, the last 30 years. And that includes many Republican White Houses and Republican leaderships in Congress. There are a lot of things that Republicans in Congress should have done. For example, when you're talking about wasteful spending, when you're talking about reforms to the Department of Education, these are things that for years Republicans have talked about, but no one has really stepped up and done it, maybe for lack of political capital, political will, but whatever that be the reason, I think a big reason why Donald Trump emerges in 2016 and wins a primary, wins an election, then wins an election again in 2024, and now is taking swift action, is because of failures, not just of Democrats, but of Republicans. So again, if I'm a Republican voter, I'm looking at this Congress and saying, are you taking advantage? What's your role? So President Trump just did 140 actions. He's empowered Doge. What are you doing to come alongside him to make sure that these things are long lasting?
Not enough.
Donald Trump can only serve for so long.
Yeah.
So continue to explore this sort of discussion. What is your prediction for the next 100 days? The first 100 days was heavy on immigration. We're in the middle of conversations on tariffs. The Secretary of Commerce talked about a possible deal being made. Many people believe it might be with India, which would be huge. It's a top competitor of China, but is a strong ally to the United States. Again, not confirmed, but that's the way the rumors are sending it. But where do you see the next 100-day going? What are the topics that the president will be pushing forward through the executive?
Well, I honestly feel that the president has taken on a lot, right? Maybe more than he could chew. Y el que mucho abarca, poco aprieta, right? Like they say in Spanish. Be careful with, taking on too much. And now he needs to bring a lot of this home, right? And what I mean by that, that he needs to show actual benefits to the American people on a lot of these efforts and projects that he's taken on. Number one, I think, would be tariffs. There is a lot of uncertainty that's been provoked by the president taking on the world, literally taking on the world on tariffs. Mm-hmm. And it's causing a lot of concern in the markets, obviously. There's a lot of fear in the markets. And you don't want to rattle the markets, right, with this kind of stuff, right? Because we are talking about commerce and trade and industry and levels of productivity, profit margins being either wiped out or increased in different parts of the world that are adverse to the U.S. And so we live in a world, Wadi, that this is about instant gratification, right? They want results not a month from now, not a year from now. They want them now, right? And to begin the negotiation process with over 200 countries is great, but at some point you got to land some of this stuff, right? And you can't be not transparent about it. You're going to have to announce some wins real fast here or the spook will continue when it comes to the markets on tariffs. And so I think there's within this 100 days, the good news for the president is he can begin to rattle off one completed negotiation after another with one country after another, and it's just going to be a parade of wins where he will have brought down the tariff margins or the rates of if things go according to plan. But if this stalls, if it he doesn't get it out of the box, this could prove really bad for him in the midterms.
Yeah, and I was going to ask, is that the formula to sort of, there have been polls that have come out, some with the Hispanic community, sort of in general, that there is a sentiment from the country of uneasiness. We've never seen this before, right? Sort of this global tariff trade war. The president calling out by name countries and presidents, tariffs across the board on Liberation Day. So there is a lot of folks who are uneasy about the future, right? I think many times people have sort of this negative perspective when it's something unfamiliar to what we've seen in the past, when we can't sort of predict the future fully. So the president's numbers have gone down on approval. What you just stated, would you say this is the formula to sort of make sure that in the midterms there isn't this wave back to the left?
Yeah, no, look, I mean, it's all about results here. Promises made, promises kept, right? Is what the people expect. Now, the president has done an absolute phenomenal job, as we've talked about in the past, on the border. I mean, he has literally taken almost full operational control of the entire border, like nobody's business and nobody ever expected. It is impressive what he's done in that area. On prices, they down to 2.5%, which is kind of where you want to be, really. Energy production is up, like way up, and on public lands as well through his Secretary of the Interior, Borgum. They're doing phenomenal work in that area. So a lot of things are tracking very well. But remember that the priority was cut spending, inflation, jobs, and the economy, right? And so on inflation, great. On cutting spending, Doge has done a phenomenal job. But yes, this thing with the tariffs continues to be, I think, a little bit of frustration. But I think the Latino voting, Latino polls, and even like our fellow Americans, the polls have dipped a little bit in favorability for Donald Trump. I think it's twofold. One of them is, again, the frustration over the blocks to the agenda, the judiciary meddling in blocking a lot of, what we thought were going to be already achievements. The fact that the media, 92% of the time when they're reporting on Donald Trump is absolutely negative, and the other, 6 or 7% is neutral, and then maybe 2 or 3% positive. That is insane. That is ridiculous. That propaganda, really, and no wonder the media is losing trust in the American people. And two, look, voters again want immediate results, and so when they don't get that, they begin to express their frustration. So it's not like they're going to move to the other side yet. They're not there yet because the Democrats are not offering a thing. They're still
get into
the woke agenda and tied to that. Exactly. So I think that favors the president at this point. But yes, the tariffs could prove in the long term a winner. But right now in the short term, it's dragging him down.
Yeah, and I would add to that, Daniel, that like you said, these are a lot of long-term proposals or long-term impacts that the president is going for, which means their messaging really has to be on point. And I think that's an area where they can improve. I know, I see the clips from Caroline, the White House press secretary, who's on point, knows her information, is witty, does not hold back, very comfortable, very confident of the content she's putting out. I'm a little bit, I believe the White House maybe has leaned in too much to her. And what I mean by that is she does very well one-on-one in these debates, with the press. I think there's a little bit more room for a rollout that is a little bit more explanatory. I mean, let's be honest, that these are everything from tariffs to even some of the immigration measures is stuff that really hasn't been seen before. And since it's, again, unfamiliar to the public, I think there's a little bit more of a runway, not necessarily on time, but on explanations, on walking the American public step by step of what's going on. on tariffs, I know that can be a little bit difficult because the president, again, is very nuanced on his approach. He's negotiating. He's not going to go in front of the American public, lay out the tactics fully so that then, these countries could know. But I do think there's a little bit of messaging and rolling out that the White House could lean into to see forward.
But I would say, entre parentheses here,
Yeah.
that I thought, you started off by talking about the event in Michigan. I thought that was very effective, right? Get out there, talk to the American people, because the media is not, putting a good face on what you're trying to do here. So you need to go and do it yourself. I also thought that the use of the cabinet meeting to open it up, to be that transparent and to go secretary by secretary, exactly, what they're focused on and their achievements and what they're trying to do, on orders by the president was also very effective. I think that's the kind of things you need to start doing to promote your message, your agenda, because the media ain't going to do it for you.
Yeah, and very much on that point, Daniel, the president this week on Wednesday met with several top companies in the United States, including Johnson & Johnson, NVIDIA, if I'm saying it correctly, the AI generator company, one of the biggest stocks right now, if I'm not mistaken. He's met with these folks, and it's really an Invest in America event campaign where they talked about these companies are investing heavily in the United States. Saudi Arabia has also announced, I believe, $1 trillion over 10 years that they're going to be investing. Earlier this year, SoftBank talked about their billions of investment. Taiwan has also talked about semiconductors, which are those chips that are so important but are highly produced in Asia. They've talked about investments here in the United States. These are one of these events where I think the president is doing a good job of bringing these folks together in this space. Do you think the investments of these folks, of U.S. companies, of even other countries like Saudi Arabia coming to the United States, will this bring confidence towards the president? Is this what the president is really looking for? Because there's a pause on tariffs right now. So is this kind of his tactics playing out, him giving an opportunity in this 90-day pause for people to kind of show their cards and say, okay, you know what? I heard your message. Let's negotiate. Here's my investment. And at the end of those 90 days, then it'll look different. Maybe it won't be those tariffs announced on Liberation Day.
Yeah, I don't think my mama would like me saying this, but hell yeah, that's exactly what you want, right? You want private sector investment. You want productivity to increase. You want the level of productivity to guide your way into prosperity. Because look, the level of productivity in an economy is the most fundamental factor that determines the standard of living. Raising it allows people to get what they want faster or more, right, in the same amount of time. So efficiency also, when it improves, you get more products and more services and more people enjoying the quality of life. But supply rises also with productivity, right? And that's important for a society. Because it also decreases real prices and increases real wages. How does that happen? Well, obviously, when you have more product and more services, the rates go down, the prices go down for them, right? And so you're able to afford more because they're creating more. But when you have less productivity and government is spending, you have too many dollars chasing too few goods. So the price increases, right? And so when you have these kind of massive investments by the private sector, that changes the game, right? Because an increase in productivity, it creates economic growth. Now, government does not create a thing. All it does is spend. All it does is take our money and flushes the economy with cash. Again, too many dollars chasing too few goods causes inflation. And that's exactly the trap that we got into these past 4 years. So if we can increase productivity, it will bring down prices. And anytime you can grow the private sector, again, it increases the quality of life and reduces prices and accessibility and affordability. It increases jobs. But to do that, we need to ease the tax burden. We need to educate workers. We need skilled workers because if NVIDIA is going to invest $1 trillion, then that means they're going to build the industry, right? They're going to build fabrication plants. And so you need the kind of workers to be educated, who have the skill set to make sure that they're going to be successful. And of course, increases in the productivity of energy sources. A country with energy is a country with a future, and that's exactly what this administration is doing. So I think they're getting a lot of things right here, right? They're laying a foundation of, let's extend the tax cuts. That has to happen. Let's educate workers. Let's deregulate. Let's ease tariffs with other countries, and then increase energy production. That is going to increase productivity. That will lower prices. That will increase the quality of life and jobs and opportunities for everybody. I love it.
Yeah, very much so, Daniel. That's really what I would call a playbook for the game that folks need to follow when it comes to economics, government efficiency, and really just the growth of opportunity for individuals. You mentioned tax reform and easing the burden of taxes. This week, reports show that the Department of Treasury is meeting with the offices of Speaker Mike Johnson, Majority Leader in the Senate, John Thune, to continue the conversations on the path forward of tax reform. Taxes are set for the middle class to expire at the end of 2015. What that means in 2026, at the end of 2025, which means in 2026, taxes would go up for middle class families, for small businesses. How important do you think it is that these folks get it right, that they are able to come to the table, get the plan together, and extend these tax cuts?
It's massive, Wadi. If we don't extend those tax cuts, then obviously people are going to be paying a lot more annually, right? I think it's like in some states it's up to like $2,500 more a year. That is a step backward. That is going below the baseline where we're at right now. What we need to do is increase productivity and increase prosperity, not reduce it or go backward. And that's exactly what would happen to millions of Americans, working class Americans, who are barely making it, by the way, a lot of them, from week to week. And you want to reduce their take-home pay by $2,500 a year? And some businesses, you're going to wipe out their profit margin. The mom and pop stores, the small businesses that Latinos are building, Latina women, who are starting to get into the entrepreneurial sector and create their businesses. You're going to wipe a lot of them out. So you're going to destroy jobs. You're going to destroy employment and productivity here if we don't get these tax cuts extended, or maybe even made permanent. That would be best. That would give us certainty for years to come. So look, I think also what happened, Wadi, let me just say this because this needs to be emphasized. What Elon Musk did was to pull back the curtain on the waste and the fraud and abuse that was happening with our tax dollars by the federal government. They were subsidizing the media to improve messaging for the left. I mean, to me, that's just outrageous. They were subsidizing NGOs who were then going and politicking and using that for election purposes. And there were NGOs that were also going to across the world and conditioning that money to other governments to do the will of the woke left, or otherwise they wouldn't get these kind of monies. And you heard about these insane projects. Does the government really need more of our money? No, it doesn't. And so I would argue that not only does it not need more of our money, we should rein in government spending even much more after tax cuts. So look, I think it's people are onto the game, and it's time we fixed it.
Yeah, they definitely go hand in hand. Look, Daniel, and it seems like a lot of the barriers are actually coming in, or the process would be a lot easier if Democrats were to get on board. I mean, they're pushing this narrative of these are tax cuts for the rich, where in plain sight, what it is, it's the middle class taxes that are going to expire.
Right.
Look, we talked earlier about that. Trump's numbers have gone down a bit. We added the context of why. But the reality is, many times you would think that when, poll numbers go down for one party or for the leader of one party, you would think they go up for the other party. Typically, that's a little bit how it goes, right? Especially in campaign season. But that has not happened here. Folks have not shifted over from Republicans or from the president to Democrats, and partly because I don't think they know who to shift over to. But what Democrats are not finding their footing. We saw this week that they brought out Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris lost the election by far. She didn't even win the primary because she didn't compete in the primary because it was the presidential sort of nomination was handed over to her. The other person that keeps sort of being out and about, and I think she's probably proactive in doing this. Maybe the party isn't putting her out there, but she is. It's AOC. It seems like this past election was really a message to Democrats that candidates like Kamala Harris are not it, and that far left candidates or elected officials like AOC are also not it. But that's who they're putting out there. What's your analysis in this? What are Democrats not really understanding here?
Yeah, look, you're 100% right in the sense that Democrats have not gotten the message yet that it was their policy positions more than anything that were being rejected because of the bad results of those policies that they've been pushing and then they've been imposing against the will of the American people. And so they went with the alternative, which is Donald Trump. And I think they're going to stick with that alternative until the Democrats actually change policy. But they refuse to do that, right? You know, they're still stuck, you know, with the same woke leadership. They're tied to the left radical, you know, the radical left bandwagon, and they're ignoring this massive center that they used to have on their side. And slowly that's been disappearing, and those folks have been distancing themselves. And still the Democrats refuse to change policy positions, you know, away from big government, away from public spending, away from imposing taxes, away from wanting to stop energy production, away from, you know, over-regulating, away from, you know, biological men in girls', you know, bathrooms, away from this anti-religious, you know, track that they were on for the longest time in arresting old people, you know, who were protesting abortions in clinics, groups at a time. To me, that was just insane. But you know, there they are, you know, still pushing the same kind of tired policies, you know, the woke radical policies. And so I think they could start to turn things around and win back the working class by getting behind the tax cut extension. But nope. You know, they're going to fight against it every step of the way, both on the Senate side and on the congressional side. They want to tax the people more, the American people more. They want to grow the largesse of the federal government and by extension, grow their power and their control over the American people. That's really their end game. And so you're right. They in order to, you know, they think win back the favor of the American electorate, or at least a majority of them, 50+1. Here comes Harris, but all she did was remind us of you know, that public appearance that she just did would remind us of why, you know, so many Americans rejected her. She is a wacko, man. I can't explain it any other way. The narratives that she spins are just crazy talk. Democrats have two avowed socialists right now that are parading around the country, pushing a woke agenda. You know, and right now they are at the top of you know, the primaries, or the potential primaries on the Democrat side. Both Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. You have Hakeem Jeffries and Cory Booker out in the steps of the Capitol. You know, playing to the woke radicals, literally playing music also, right, on the steps, trying to win over, I guess, boomers. I don't know who they're trying to tap into with that kind of circus. And then, of course, don't get me started on what they're fighting for.
Yeah,
we talked about that last time. You know, the radicals in the universities, the criminals and the cartel members, undocumented pandilleros, you know, that are being trucked off to El Salvador. That's who they're trying to retrieve back into the U.S. I mean, you're fighting for the wrong people, but there you have them. They're lost.
Yeah, there you have it. It's a Democratic Party that is lost at a moment where you would think in the polls they have an opening. They continue to not find their footing, fighting for the wrong issues, fighting for the wrong policies, not giving any results. And then when they are on the campaign trail, honestly, it's not really motivation. You had Tim Waltz at the beginning where he was showing the stock of Tesla, and he's like, "This is what makes me feel better." And then several reports show that in his own state, the pension funds for firefighters, for teachers, for police officers, a good amount of their stocks are in Tesla. So he's cheering against the own pension fund of his own people, of a company that makes cars in the United States.
The arrogance of the man that he got brought on by Harris to be the code talker to white guys. Mm-hmm. To me, that's just again crazy talk. It's like, oh, so Harris can't talk to white guys? They had to bring you on? It's just stereotypical. It's almost racist too, right? It's like they're just saying all the wrong things. They're on their heels, and I don't think they've ever been in a position where people are laughing at them, and they haven't found their mojo. They don't have game right now, unfortunately, and yeah, they're getting their butt kicked.
Yeah, very much so. It's been an intense week in the game of politics. Everything from Trump's first 100 days to analyzing the polls to looking at Democrats of where they are, where they're failing, and where they're not able to come out, and the importance of tax, or the negotiations we're seeing around tax reform and the impacts that we'll probably be seeing in the next few months on a possible bill coming out of Congress. But that's been Garza Gaitan and the game. Again, want to encourage everyone to stay connected, subscribe, make sure to follow us, and stay tuned for our next episode next week. Thank you all.